Seth Rollins just delivered the most unhinged and personal threat in WWE history after Bron Breakker's brutal betrayal left the Visionary broken and bleeding on Raw. And if you're not absolutely captivated by Seth's promise to systematically destroy the young superstar who dared to betray his trust, you clearly don't understand the level of rage and vengeance that's about to be unleashed. What we witnessed wasn't just typical wrestling rivalry, it was the declaration of total war from a man who has been betrayed one too many times and is now prepared to end Bron Breakker's career before it even reaches its full potential. The sight of Seth Rollins covered in his own blood standing in the wreckage of what should have been his triumphant moment while screaming "I'll destroy you" at the retreating Bron Breakker will be remembered as one of the most visceral promises of revenge ever made in professional wrestling. This wasn't just anger, it was primal fury from someone who has finally snapped after years of being systematically betrayed by everyone he's ever trusted. Seth Rollins just vowed to end Bron Breakker's career. The Visionary has become the Avenger. Those weren't just dramatic words from excited commentators, they were terrified acknowledgments that the usually calculated architect has transformed into something far more dangerous and unpredictable after being pushed beyond his psychological breaking point. The genuine concern in their voices captured how serious this situation has become. You want to talk about betrayals that trigger such complete psychological breaks that they fundamentally transform someone's character? Bron Breakker didn't just turn on Seth Rollins, he destroyed the last remaining shred of faith Seth had in human loyalty, creating a monster driven purely by revenge who no longer cares about championships, matches, or winning, only about making Bron suffer in ways that will haunt him forever. The betrayal itself was calculated to inflict maximum damage both physically and psychologically. Seth had just successfully defended his position against challengers when Bron, who Seth had mentored, protected, and positioned as his eventual successor, attacked from behind with a steel chair and delivered a beatdown so savage that medical personnel immediately called for help. But here's what makes this betrayal absolutely devastating for Seth: Bron didn't just attack him. During the assault, Breakker was screaming about how Seth was holding him back and how the old generation needs to be destroyed to make room for new stars. The rejection of Seth's mentorship and dismissal of his value was psychologically more damaging than any physical attack. The most shocking aspect of the betrayal was how personal Bron made it. Instead of just delivering moves and leaving, Breakker stood over Seth's broken body and delivered a promo about how Seth represents everything wrong with WWE veterans who refuse to step aside and let younger talent shine. The ideological attack made this about more than just ambition. Here's a question that's going to reveal the generational warfare aspect of this rivalry. Did you notice how Bron's betrayal speech positioned this as young versus old rather than just personal betrayal, suggesting a larger movement against veteran wrestlers? The actual destruction Seth suffered was brutal and designed to send a message to all veteran wrestlers. Multiple spears, repeated chair shots targeting Seth's already injured back, and a gorilla press slam through a table left the Visionary barely conscious and needing medical attention. Bron wasn't just attacking, he was making a statement. But the most devastating moment came when Bron grabbed the microphone and said, "Seth, you and every other washed-up veteran need to understand, your time is over. I'm not asking for my spot, I'm taking it, and anyone who tries to stop me will end up just like you." The complete disrespect for everything Seth has accomplished was genuinely shocking. The dismissal of Seth's legendary career and contributions as meaningless obstacles to be destroyed rather than respected hit deeper than any physical attack. Bron wasn't just betraying his mentor, he was declaring that Seth's entire legacy is worthless in the new era Breakker represents. Quick question for the respect versus ambition debate: is Bron justified in viewing veterans as obstacles that need to be forcefully removed, or does his complete lack of respect for Seth's accomplishments reveal dangerous entitlement? The most infuriating aspect for Seth is that he brought this on himself by trusting and elevating someone who viewed his mentorship as weakness rather than generosity. Seth gave Bron opportunities, shared knowledge, protected him from mistakes, and Bron interpreted all of that as evidence that Seth feared being replaced. The investigation into when Bron started planning this betrayal reveals he'd been resentful of Seth's mentorship for months. Instead of appreciating the guidance, Breakker apparently viewed every piece of advice as condescension and every opportunity as something he deserved rather than something gifted. The entitlement is staggering. But perhaps the most shocking detail is that other young wrestlers reportedly encouraged Bron's betrayal. Sources suggest a group of rising stars have been discussing how veterans are hogging the spotlight and need to be forcefully removed, meaning Bron's attack on Seth might be just the beginning of a generational war. The revelation that this betrayal is potentially part of a larger movement creates terrifying implications. If multiple young wrestlers believe destroying veterans is justified to accelerate their own careers, WWE could descend into chaos where experience and accomplishment mean nothing compared to youth and ambition. Here's another question about wrestling culture: has WWE created an environment where young wrestlers feel entitled to success without earning respect, and does that mindset inevitably lead to betrayals like Bron's attack on Seth? The most powerful moment came in the aftermath when Seth finally regained consciousness and delivered his revenge promise. Covered in blood, barely able to stand, Seth grabbed a microphone and said, "Bron, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. I've spent years being betrayed and learning to forgive, but not this time. I'm going to systematically destroy everything you are and everything you hope to become. The raw emotion and genuine rage in Seth's voice created one of the most authentic revenge promises in WWE history. This wasn't scripted corporate messaging, this was genuine fury from someone who has finally been pushed too far and is ready to embrace his darkest instincts to achieve vengeance. But the most devastating part of Seth's threat was the specificity. I'm not just going to beat you, Bron, I'm going to expose you as the entitled, undeserving fraud you are. I'm going to dismantle your confidence, destroy your credibility, and make you wish you'd never heard my name. By the time I'm done, you'll be begging me for mercy that I will never give. The promise to destroy Bron psychologically rather than just physically shows Seth understands that true revenge requires more than winning matches. He plans to systematically dismantle everything that makes Bron confident and successful, creating psychological trauma that will haunt Breakker for his entire career. The fan reaction to this betrayal and Seth's response has been absolutely explosive, with social media divided between supporting Seth's justified revenge and praising Bron's boldness in forcefully taking his spot. The generational divide among fans mirrors the on-screen conflict. Here's a question about fan loyalty: do you support Seth's quest for revenge against his betrayer, or do you believe Bron was justified in forcefully removing an obstacle to his advancement? The most controversial aspect is whether Seth bears responsibility for Bron's betrayal through his own mentorship approach. Some argue Seth was too controlling and patronizing, inadvertently creating resentment in someone who viewed guidance as condescension. Others believe Bron is simply ungrateful and entitled. The testimonies from other wrestlers reveal divided opinions about who's actually at fault. Seth can be pretty condescending when mentoring younger guys, one performer noted. But Bron's complete lack of gratitude and respect is also really off-putting. They both contributed to this situation in different ways, but perhaps the most important question is what kind of match can resolve this level of personal animosity. A standard wrestling match seems inadequate given the psychological warfare and genuine hatred involved. This rivalry demands something more brutal and career-defining. The investigation into potential match stipulations reveals WWE is apparently considering an I Quit match or even a career versus career match given the intensity of their conflict. The stakes need to match the personal nature of their hatred or the payoff will feel unsatisfying. The comparison to other mentor-student betrayals reveals this might be the most personal. Triple H and Randy Orton's Evolution split was shocking but business-motivated. CM Punk and MJF's falling out was painful but expected. But Seth and Bron's conflict combines personal betrayal with generational warfare, creating unique intensity. Here's a question for the rivalry analysis experts: where does Seth Rollins vs. Bron Breakker rank among the most personal and potentially violent rivalries in WWE history based on the circumstances of their conflict? The most terrifying implication is that Seth might genuinely try to end Bron's career rather than just defeat him. His promise to destroy everything you hope to become suggests he wants to inflict damage that prevents Bron from ever reaching his full potential. That level of vindictiveness is genuinely disturbing. The testimonies from people who have witnessed Seth's current mental state reveal genuine concern about how far he might go. Seth is legitimately unhinged right now, one source revealed. He's not talking about winning matches, he's obsessed with making Bron suffer in ways that go beyond normal wrestling revenge. But the most shocking development is that Bron appears completely unfazed by Seth's threats. Instead of showing concern or regret, Breakker has been posting on social media mocking Seth as an old man having a tantrum and suggesting that threats from someone he already destroyed are meaningless. The arrogance is stunning. The complete dismissal of Seth's revenge threats as empty bluster from a broken veteran shows Bron either has incredible confidence or dangerous delusion about the threat he faces. Underestimating an enraged Seth Rollins is a mistake that could cost Breakker everything. The most important consideration is whether this rivalry will ultimately help or hurt both men's careers. For Seth, it's an opportunity to prove he's still dangerous and relevant. For Bron, it's a chance to legitimize himself by defeating a legend. But the personal hatred risks creating a situation where both men damage each other beyond repair. Here's a question about risk versus reward: is a rivalry this intense worth the potential career damage it could inflict on both competitors, or should personal animosity be avoided in favor of safer professional competition? The investigation into WWE's plans for this feud reveals they're treating it as their most important storyline, with plans for months of escalating violence leading to a definitive conclusion. The company apparently views the generational warfare aspect as having long-term storytelling potential beyond just Seth and Bron. But perhaps the most shocking detail is that this might not even end with a single match. Sources suggest WWE is planning a series of matches with escalating stipulations, allowing Seth and Bron to trade victories and psychological warfare over an extended period. The commitment to long-term storytelling is impressive. The most devastating aspect for both men is that this conflict has become so personal that their entire identities are now tied to destroying each other. Seth's value as a veteran wrestler depends on proving he can still dominate young challengers, while Bron's credibility as the next generation's leader depends on definitively defeating the legendary veteran. The psychological stakes create a situation where losing isn't just professional disappointment but rather existential crisis that questions their entire self-worth. That level of pressure guarantees desperate measures and potentially reckless decisions from both men. The comparison to other old versus young rivalries reveals this has potential to be the definitive example. Hogan vs. Rock, Cena vs. Orton, Michaels vs. Angle all explored generational conflict, but none had this level of genuine personal animosity combined with legitimate questions about respect and entitlement. Here's a final question for the entire WWE Universe. In the battle between Seth Rollins seeking revenge for betrayal and Bron Breakker fighting to prove the new generation deserves their spot, whose side are you on and why? The coming weeks will reveal whether Seth's promise to destroy Bron is justified revenge or whether Breakker's forceful approach to claiming his spot represents the necessary evolution of wrestling culture. Either way, this rivalry has created the most intense and personal conflict on WWE television. The wrestling world is captivated by the explosive hatred between Seth Rollins and Bron Breakker as betrayal and generational warfare collide. Seth's promise to systematically destroy the young star who betrayed his trust represents more than just revenge, it's a veteran's desperate fight to prove his relevance while teaching a painful lesson about respect. Bron's complete dismissal of that threat shows either supreme confidence or dangerous arrogance that will determine whether he becomes the next generation's leader or a cautionary tale about entitlement. Seth Rollins vs. Bron Breakker isn't just another wrestling rivalry, it's the embodiment of generational conflict, questions about mentorship and respect, and the age-old debate about whether veterans should gracefully step aside or force young challengers to truly earn their spot. Seth's vow to destroy Bron represents the rage of someone betrayed one too many times, while Bron's attack symbolizes a generation that believes they deserve success without first earning the respect of those who came before. This war will define both men's legacies and potentially reshape WWE's entire culture around respect, entitlement, and the brutal cost of ambition.